don't even know who all is in the room. But let me just say that, we feel that running for office is incredibly important. So I just want to ask all of the electeds who are still in the room to stand. If any of you are still here. Well, anyway, we really, let's just give them a round of applause, even if it's in absentia. Okay, and then the final group that I wanted to ask stand, and I don't know how many are left, are students or alumni from our graduate certificate program. I see some of them around. Could they please stand up? So this is a perfect segue into our closing plenary, because our certificate program, as you know, is designed to train women for leadership positions in the public sector and the nonprofit sector. Part of that is running for office. A lot of that is civic engagement. And this is really what United States of Women is about. I just want to say that I was one of the lucky people who got to go to the United States of Women conference last June, and I see the number of people. Raise your hand if you were able to go to DC. Yeah, there's a number of us here. It was inspiring. It was amazing. There were thousands of women, and I just was so excited when we had the opportunity to partner with United States of Women, and that's very much thanks to Taylor Barnes, who is the director. So I'm going to just, in the interest of time, I'm just going to introduce Taylor and say we're looking forward to learning about what you're doing, what some of your partner organizations are doing, and welcome.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Anne. I know we are so pleased to be here today. I did not know we'd be following up Elizabeth Warren, so I hope we live up to all the energy that she put in me. So like Anne said, my name is Taylor Barnes. Sorry, I'm a little too tall for this mic. And I'm the director of the United States of Women. We were thrilled to work with the White House Council on Women and Girls earlier this year to convene the first ever summit on the United States of Women, where we gathered 5,000 gender equality activists to present and discuss the most innovative solutions to the barriers that women still face. The United States of Women is an initiative run out of Civic Nation, which allows us to carry on the important work of being the megaphone to the women's equality movement, no matter who's in the White House. So we are still alive. We're very excited. We're committed more than ever to really digging in and pushing for equality, which is why we are so pleased to be here today convening this discussion in partnership with the New England Women's Policy Conference and with leaders who all work to involve more women in our democracy. It's no secret that when women hold elected office, we are more collaborative and better at reaching across the aisle than our male colleagues. So I know that we can all agree that in today's political climate, it's essential that we recruit more women to run at every level, up and down the ticket, to ensure a more united state of America. And it's in that vein, I want our conversation today to focus on solutions and steps we can all take to achieve parity for women in elected office far before the 100 years they say it's going to take. We'd love for this important conversation to get beyond the amazing women and men in this room. So when you chat about this, please make sure you tag Us Women 2016 and use this hashtag State of Women and NEWPC 16. So very, very thrilled to introduce some of our panelists and dive right into this. So we have today Patricia Totozile. She's the Chief Executive Officer of Casa de Esperanza, and she's here representing, Latinas represent. There we go. That's why I messed it up. And we also have Erin Velarde, who's the founder and executive director of Vote, Run, Lead. We're just doing claps for everybody. Snaps for Erin. There you go. And then we have the Honorable Leah Webb. She was I'll actually get to her bio when I ask you your question. I don't want to spoil it too quickly, but she's the managing principal of Webb Consulting. Then we have Amy Zucchero. She's the Chief Resource Development and Communications Officer at Ignite, followed by Claire Bresnahan, the Executive Director of She Should Run.
Let's do this.
Woo.
All right.
Yeah.
Last panel.
Whoops. Is this okay? Great. So without further ado, we're just going to get started. Claire, one of the exciting things that I heard in the wake of this election was that the nominations for women to run for office were flooding into She Should Run every hour. Can you talk to us about why you think that happened?
Yeah, First, everyone feeling good for the last panel? Yeah. Let's end Friday on a good note. It was incredible. So I think like a lot of us will talk about the experiences on Wednesday morning. I admit I was working from bed, and around 10 a.m. I'll admit it. The nominations did just start coming in. I think one of our signature programs is Ask a Woman to Run. We're all about culture change. How do you create a culture and a society that is inspiring and encouraging more women and girls to want to run in the first place? And one way we do that is through our Ask a Woman to Run tool on our website, and they just came in by the hundreds, and we're at over 2,600 women have stepped up and pledged they want to run for office in the past week. And each, right? Each, and I have to say, like, for the team and for people I was just sharing that with, was to be able to give, like, each nomination felt like a glimmer of hope. Each one felt like a fist bump. And I think, been really thinking about why that has been happening. And I mean, first it has to do with the fact that in action there's hope, right? And if anyone's ever lost a loved one, you know that sometimes there's this moment where you're getting the house ready, you're doing a lot of activity. Even one of our hosts talked about his daughter got up in the morning, right, and like cleaned her house and got ready. Senator Warren talked about in trial times, her mom like picked her up, went out and got a job. That's what resiliency is, when you get out there and you want to do something. And I think it was also a huge wake-up call. So often, I think a lot of us the women and girls we talk with, there's a lot of women who say, I want to see more women in office. Of course, we're all here. We want equal representation. But it started to get, I think folks realize that this isn't politics as usual. This is truly about women's equal representation. And a wake-up call that we can't keep saying, I want to support other women who are going to run. Because if we keep saying that, then all of us are going to be off the sidelines, keep saying, well, I want to support the woman who's going to run. But where the hell is she? It's you. It's you. It finally was this realization of, oh my God, if not who, it's got to be me. It's got to be me. And so I have to say, like, it's incredible. And I would also encourage us to keep on holding on to that energy. We can't get complacent. Right. It shouldn't have to take an election like this for all of us to realize that we're the leaders our country needs. So you cannot lose that energy and that fire in your belly right now. And it was truly, and it continues to be a truly powerful, galvanizing force to see all these women rallying and know that we can't keep waiting for some leaders to come save us. We're the leaders that we need.
Yeah. And can you tell us what She Should Run does in a few sentences?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So how we affect culture change is we try to do a couple of things a little bit outside of the box. So we've done partnerships like with Dove. We did a town hall debate with teen girls in Vegas right before the debate on a conversation on how #words matter, and have a discussion on how was the sexist, misogynistic, body-shaming language that we've heard from a presidential candidate, how's that affecting girls' desire to lead? We partnered this summer with Barbie to release the first all-female vice president, President doll set. And we also released this really fun book where, I won't read the whole thing, but we based it off of the old, does anyone remember The Fun with Dick and Jane? Yeah. Children's novels. Okay. So this is our tongue-in-cheek adult version, and I'll just read you my favorite page. It's called See Joan Run. You can find it on our website. And my favorite page is that Joan always wanted to run for office, but Joan is not a dick. Is there room for Joan in a world of dicks?
Yes, there is.
And the answer is yes. And so, right, it's this understanding that if you zoom out big picture, we talk about how there's so much of there's so many organizations focused on this because there's 500,000 elected positions across this country. And if we are going to reach parity in our lifetime, we need hundreds of thousands of women running and answering the call. And we've got to do that by, so many of our groups are focused on getting to new audiences of women. And that's why we've tried to be bold, be different, and try new tactics to be able to invite new people into the cause. And then once we get women interested, we want to give them really simple ways to access the pipeline. So there's the Ask a Woman to Run tool on our website. You can also sign up for our online incubator, which is a series of e-courses. It's an online community, and it's all about connecting the dots between your everyday life and you running for office someday. I think so often there's this huge barrier where we think even running for school board or local county board seems really far removed, and our e-course and the supportive community is about helping you understand that you've been preparing for this your whole career and your whole personal life and how you volunteer and prepare, and you're ready. So we try to package that way, is where how can we invite more women into this cause, and then how do we give them the simple, easy ways to access that pipeline, and then make sure that they know about all the other organizations that are going to keep moving them along to running and winning someday.
Awesome, thank you. Amy, I want to talk to you about girls. So Ignite recognizes the political power in every girl. I know I personally shed tears when I saw your PSA this summer, Declare Your Ambition. It's like an amazing girl starting to run for office. It's amazing. So how are you positioning this most recent election as a learning moment and hopefully a motivational tool for all the girls you serve?
Thanks. So as Taylor mentioned, Ignite actually is one of the only organizations in the space that is focused primarily on young women and encouraging them in high school and college to, as they're forming their leadership aspirations, to consider a lifetime of service in whatever form that may take, at whatever level that may be for them. And so we're working in high school and colleges. And across the country on Wednesday, we started to just get, like Claire mentioned, a ton of calls and emails and messages on Facebook around, I'm not giving up, I'm not backing down, I am incredibly angry, I am incredibly fired up, and I'm ready to run. And so I think, while I, like Claire, was in my bed on Wednesday morning thinking, what's the message that we're going to put out to these young women? How do we frame this? We didn't have to. They did it for us. And so, I think that young women are incredibly resilient. This is early on for them. And so they're going to use this energy to prepare campaigns, to create community, which is what Ignite does, to surround themselves with people. And I think for us, what we need to do is tell them we have their backs and open up our networks, open up our Rolodexes, open up our pockets, and show them with our actions that we want them to run and that they should run.
Yeah, thank you. Leah, I'm excited because you are here representing what elected officials. So you're actually there we go. I like it. You're actually a graduate of Vote Run Lead, which is exciting. And you were elected as the first and youngest African American representative in the Binghamton City Council. 2 terms. Can you speak to us about a time, I'm sure there were thousands, but where having your voice in the room really changed the outcome of a decision before the City Council?
Wow. Well, first, I want to thank everybody for staying around. We've had some tough acts to follow, not just today, but just overall where we are. I would say that in thinking about that, it was a number of things, but particularly, is it my mic? Can't hear me?
We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's this luxurious lux. Right. Is that better? I want to do this thing here. Okay, so there are a number of issues that came before City Council, and I think part of the hope I have moving forward is that we have women at every level of office, not just at the federal level, because politics is also local. So one issue in particular that stood out to me was with regards to poverty in my community. So children under the age of 18 are living in poverty, and it's double the state average. It's over 40%. And one of the things that I proposed was looking at creating sustainable food systems within our local community. And so looking at things through zoning, supporting urban farms, community gardens, and the backlash that I received was incredulous because there was this denial that poverty actually existed, and the kinds of experiences that residents were having, it was very much so this kind of sentiment, well, that's what those people over there are experiencing. That's not the general experience of the community. And so I remember myself and one of my other colleagues, who was also a woman, we were fighting tooth and nail with some of our colleagues to push for this legislation Unfortunately, we didn't have enough support to get it passed, but the amount of community rallying around this legislation was absolutely incredible, and it led to other ways in which the legislation took form. So that's just one example. We've done things with regards to workplace environment as far as having a place for women to nurse their children. And this was something that we actually pushed at the city level, and we got the county to actually get on board with supporting this particular piece of legislation. And so I would say that for anyone that has ever thought about running for office, or even if you haven't thought about it, because it was most certainly not in my, we would say, your 5-year, 10-year plan, but I was very much so encouraged. One of my mentors, both mine and Erin's, Marie Wilson, talks about that for women, we have to be asked at least 3 times. And that was most certainly my story. But I will tell you that it makes an incredible difference. And you're not always going to be appreciated for those meetings you're in where you're questioned, where your ideas are questioned and poked and pulled apart and dismantled. But I will tell you that the work and the rewards that come from not only creating a space at the table, but having people actively speak in the room is critical, and that is the role that you can play as a school board member, as a city council representative, as a town supervisor, as a county leader, as a state representative. Y'all see where I'm going with this, right? So it was just, to me, it's so important that oftentimes as women, we give away our power way too much. And so if there's nothing else that anyone takes from, my story or any of the remarks that my fellow panelists will share, is that own your power and empower others.
Yeah, amen. Well, I feel like if you don't want to run for office, you have a career in motivational speaking. I'm like, fired up too. Erin, I wanted to talk to you about how Vote Run Lead really meets women where they're at, including mobilizing voters and encouraging leadership. What's one thing you wish you could tell all women about their leadership potential? I guess, what does Vote Run Lead tell women about their leadership potential?
Yeah, we tell women that you're the ones we've been waiting for. And you're ready. We're not going to take some piece of coal and run you through our program and you're going to come out a diamond. Like, you're a diamond, and we are desperate for you, and I'm going to find you a nice, beautiful setting that fits your personality. Okay? Is it whether that's on the school board or the county commission or, working on a campaign or just sort of stepping your political toes in the water. And Vote Run Lead at its heart is a network of women just like Leah. We worked quite closely with the women's funds and foundations for many years to actually go after the grantee communities to say that you are the government in exile. We will train you how to run for office. We will help you actually get activated and get connected to your local political infrastructure. And we did that while Vote Run Lead was at the White House Project for many years under Marie Wilson's leadership. 2 years ago, we spun out on our own at voterunlead.org to combine the sort of training of getting women in a room, and really beautiful rooms, 60% women of color, close to 70% are under 35. And when women walk into those rooms and the keynote speaker is Leah Webb and not someone from DC, it changes the entire, it's like, oh, she's me. Oh, I was talking to her in the hallway. You're the keynote speaker? I mean, that has happened at workshops. This is not a story, right? And so it's really just showing other women who look like you. Denise is one of our alumni. I mean, these are the kind of gatherings that we've put together. There's a magic in the room when you're in rooms like this. And so we wanted to supplement that and augment that with sort of like a hand-holding online. So you got pumped up after a weekend with us. We now have classes twice a week online that are live. Some of them are really boring, like campaign budgeting. But the one coming up on December 1st has Elise Stefanik and Kirsten Sinema, the 2 very young women in Congress, talking about what kind of bold leadership our country is going to need. So it's that combination of training and technology and making it super accessible. Most of our folks are scholarshiped. Women will not pay to be trained to run for office. I tried, right? So we're like, okay, we'll give you 25% off, and you can bring a friend, and we'll cover your travel, and we'll do childcare, and we'll make sure that you have a grant if you need to, leave a babysitter at home. And rural, we took a really strong interest in rural women to make sure that, and it's something we're diving back into, and especially given the demographic shifts that we're seeing after this election. So if you find us online or if you find us in a, you've been invited, we have a similar tool, seeing an uptick on our social media, an uptick on women who've been invited. What's really interesting is that we have a little sidebar that says, like, Psst, nominate yourself, and about 40% of the women have begun to nominate themselves.
Yeah.
And that really bucks the research that women have to be asked. So I think we're seeing a new group of self-identifiers.
Yeah.
And has that been raising? Is that 40% been rising over the time you've been at Vote Run Lead?
The 40% has been pretty consistent. I haven't
would
looked
agree.
at the data,
I should have.
but of the last week, we've just been kind of trying to keep up with it. But I imagine it's going to be a little bit higher after the uptick for the election. But that was pre-election, so that's also interesting to see that more people are self-identifying. Hopefully, you all have seen Ilhan Omar, the first Somali American woman to be elected. Yes.
In Minnesota.
In Minnesota. We love Minnesota. It's actually where we're incorporated. She's an alumni of ours, and we you are the one. Like, if you even have that little bit of an inkling that, like, well, I'm going to find the woman, or it really is you. I had a conversation with a woman this morning about it. And there isn't actually a better time to run for local office because, like, shit's crazy, right? Like, it's always a change election, even at the local level. People are interested in new stuff. They're, like, willing to hear really strong values. You don't have, like, hell, you don't have to be qualified. Like, there's a lot of rules that have just been broken that are actually really good for women to run at the local level. So I think we can make that happen.
I love the silver lining and everything. Patty, speaking of new political climates, immigration really seems like it's going to be on the forefront of the national agenda. We need more female representation across the board, but especially among Hispanic women. Most people don't realize that a Latina has never served in the U.S. Senate. Not yet, but soon, I know, with the help of all of us. What is Latinas Represent doing to widen that pipeline and make sure that Latina voices are represented in this climate?
Well, what I can tell you is that we now will have the first Latina senator from Nevada. Catherine Cortez Masto is a fabulous woman, and we are so excited that this is the first Latina. I can remember years ago when the first Latina representative was elected, Ileana from Florida, and she's Republican Party. Catherine is Democratic Party. Most of the Latinas are in the Democratic Party, but there are a couple of Republican Latinas in Latina representatives. And Latinas Represent is a program of the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda and the NHLA. And the NHLA is a coalition of 40 of the major Latino organizations in the country. So I feel very privileged that Casa de Esperanza is one of those 40. And we've been involved in NHLA for about 4 to 5 years now. So for me, one of those reasons is because our communities, I always say they're not needy. They have needs. Our community has needs like every other community, but we're not a needy people. And we're also very resilient, and we're very powerful when we put ourselves to it. So to not have a lot of Latina, we have Latino representation, but to look at that and then look at the number of Latinas, I believe there may be 9 right now. 9 representatives from various cities, a few from California, so that's great. But that's 10 Latinas in all of Congress. And so Latinas Represent was created in partnership with Political Parity in 2014. So we're not long existing, but it's a really critical program of the NHLA because of the 40 organizations, every single one of them, every single one of the CEOs believes in the need to increase Latina representation all across the board. We're talking locally and nationally. And so the need right now is that Latinas really feel like they can do it, and so we do the same thing. It's about really getting the word out, encouraging women, encouraging young women to think about public service. And we tie them together with Latinas that are in public service, whether it's in Congress or local city council members or involved in the federal government or state government in some way. And so there was an event that we held a couple of years ago when we launched Latinas Represent, and there were probably about 70 people in the room. Majority were women, and majority were Latinas. And after the presentations and the speakers from various parts of government, local and state and national, we asked the question, how many of you are interested, even if it's just you're thinking about it? And you know, there were like 25 Latinas from teens to elders that went up in front of the room, and it was just really, really exciting. So for us, we need the representation to really make a difference in our community. It's so interesting to hear about the calls. I know that Latinas Represent has also received some calls, and some of our elected officials, especially at state level, really pushed other women to get involved. And in Minnesota, we're really privileged in that we have some great Latinas in office right now, and they hold us accountable. You know, and the one thing that happens is that Senator Patricia Torres Rey from Minnesota, who has been really active with a lot of work across the country, she will literally email all of us and say, okay, you need to support this person. She's running for, for a school board in this community. She's running for city council here. And so she knows where we live, and no one says no to her, but that is now how we really respond, because it's easy to ignore, a request. It's not the right thing to ignore the request anymore. And so I think it is about rallying and really having people understand that we can make a difference. And we need to make a difference because on the other side, as the CEO of Casa de Esperanza, the calls we received the next day were from our community members and organizations across the country, small Latino organizations across the country that were struggling with what to do. How do I create hope? On our end in St. Paul and Minneapolis, we were hearing from students that were feeling really scared.
Yeah.
I mean, they were walking into school and getting harassed, seeing signs on the wall that said, go back home. One girl said that she was with a friend who had her hijab on, and that was pulled. And then when she tried to stop it, they said, well, don't worry, you're going back home soon. And she was a Peruvian. But again, just knowing this fear, and even from my staff who have family members that they feel are in danger. So to be on that side on the ground, and then to be on the other side that is really trying to rally more representation, I see the need. I see it firsthand, and it's painful right now. Immigration's always been an issue, and comprehensive immigration reform has been a struggle, but we've made some advances. So the fear now is, where does that go? And the only way that changes is with much more representation, I believe, from women all across the board, not just Latinas, but all women, and I believe that'll make a difference.
I want to add something to that. That I think part of also why women, particularly a lot of women of color, are fearful. One of the things we hear is that I will be the first and only, right? I'm going to be the first and only Latina. I'm going to be the first and only. And there's a young woman, Jocasta Zamarripa. She is, I think, also part of Latinos Represent. She's alumni of ours, who moved from that activist to the legislature. And she was the first Latina to the Wisconsin State Legislature. And the second Latina was someone on the other side of the aisle. And they came together. They were able to have a conversation. They have different viewpoints, but they were able to butt heads and sort of have this kind of representation. She also brought 3,000 activists to the Capitol to shut down Wisconsin that day. It was in the news this year, right? That community ties, and she's the only now one of 2 Latinas in the state legislature. Georgia is also getting their first Latina in the state legislature. Also VRL alumni. But it's a first and only, and these are big burdens for us. And so we have to really create ecosystems around these women who are first and onlys. If you aren't going to run and you know that you're in the check the box, never going to run category, how are we creating these ecosystems? How are we doing that mentorship? Another amazing woman, Crisanto Duran, is now the Speaker of this Colorado House. Yep. Another VRL alum. I'm on a roll. But her and the state senator are both Latina, and they are taking over the Capitol. And that, you are going to see really big things come out of Colorado. Colorado has this really beautiful pipeline with Vote Run Lead, Emerge is there, Ignite is there.
Latinos
The
Represent is
Latinos
there.
Represent is headquartered there, and it is like, you go to that Capitol and you see women running all over the Capitol, and they are not aides, they are legislators. And that's a really good model for us to look at about how do we create these ecosystems around women and women of color and firsts, and really make sure that they are succeeding and have what they need to continue to run for office, to recruit others. I know Crisanta's got a young woman that she's mentored that just won the Emerge Award. She's 24 at the city council. So that's what it takes. It's going to be this snowball effect that at first it's going to feel hard, and some of us are going to have to do it. The next thing you know, it's going to be an avalanche of women running for office.
I wanted to just say one thing too. When we started with political parity. Our partners now are the Colorado Community Foundation and Hope in California. And that really allows, I mean, that's what it takes. It takes the partnerships. For the NHLA, when people think of 40 national organizations, all have their issues and areas that they work on and different parts of our communities across the country that they serve. But we are about policy advocacy as a coalition. And for all 40 to really come together and say, you know what, we need to focus on gender equity. How do we do that? What does it take? So we created a Latina task force, which now is the arm that works with Latinos Represent as well. But this year, at our 25th anniversary of the NHLA, we published the Hispanic Public Policy Agenda. It is the most comprehensive and the most gender equitable public policy that has ever been done by the organization in 25 years. And I really credit the task force, the Latina task force, of which we co-chair. I co-chair it along with the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health. And the task force works with all of our committees and really supports Latinos Represent. Latinos Represent was at the Republican Convention and at the Democratic Convention. We're nonpartisan, and we're serious about that. But it takes those coalitions to get on the ground. You know, we have to make a commitment that it's not only conversation at the national level, but each of our organizations is responsible at our state or county, wherever we're based, level. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad you guys both mentioned first and only in the ecosystem. Leah, you are a first and only. What was useful for you both, like when you were deciding to run and running, and then when you were in office in that ecosystem, whether that be like public, private, individuals, what kept your fire alive to say yes me and to take that and to maintain that?
So, I don't know if you can hear me, but like I have to do this weird, like, over my shoulder. For me, well, my background was in community organizing, and so, hey, one time for community organizers. So, for me, like I said earlier, it wasn't a part of my initial plan. I actually have been working on campaigns, local, state, and federal, but it is a very different experience being the person that is up for public consumption. And so a lot of the barriers that are a part of our political system, and can I just be candid, family?
Yeah.
The system that we have in place is designed to keep the status quo. And I don't want anyone to think for a moment that this work we're talking about that needs to happen to truly change our communities is going to happen overnight. And I'm not trying to give the impression anyone in this room thinks that, but I think a lot of times when we're doing a lot of emphasis, which is important, on getting women to run, we also have to spend as much time once they're there.
Right.
Because the system is designed to weed out those that are trying to change the status quo. And so for me, having a support system with my family, friends, organizations like Vote, Run, Lead was and still is very critical to the work that I've been able to do as a legislator, but also just as a person. Because when people are coming to you sharing disparaging experiences, and you're in a position and you're in a room with people who may not agree on the approach, but it still hits you. And how do you get in a position to and know how to move within the system to change it? And so for me, when I ran, my campaign was diverse. I had people from my neighborhood, from outside of the neighborhood, across every sector, race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status. And I will tell you, my foray into elected office actually ran against the city council president. And so that
No
was
small feat.
Just a small, I had to run against him twice. And I will tell you that just the personality dynamics within parties oftentimes weeds out people, especially women, who are really in it to truly make a difference in their communities. And so I think it's important for us to take into consideration that the amount of work we put in to running for office and supporting awesome candidates, we also need to surround them throughout their entire political, whether it's a year, 2-year term, because that is critically important, because I have seen folks who've gone in with the best intentions and have either burned out very easily or kind of turned against their own communities that they were there to represent in the first place. So for me, and I would just offer this to anyone thinking about running for office, is that you have to have a strong and honest support system. And don't be afraid to look outside of normal places or your close affinity groups. That I've also had partnerships with folks that I never thought would even remotely be interested in the work I was trying to do. But I feel that is so important, and just be prepared. It is a long process, but it is very, very rewarding. And that decision I made now almost 9 years ago to run for office is something that has forever impacted me, both personally and professionally, and my community and my family.
Claire and Amy, I want to talk to you guys really quickly about the messages that we send to girls before we all go to the reception. I know you have done your amazing work with the Barbie dolls. I know I still have to get one. I'm really psyched about those. I just remember playing with Barbies when I was little, and the set of things you could be was so incredibly limited, and I'm so glad that you guys took that and have expanded that. And then I know you at Ignite do so many trainings. Like, what's one quick switch you guys have made in how you talk to girls?
In terms of quick switch, well, I think the one thing that why we target young women and why we've chosen that as our theory of change is because, in high school, middle school, and into college, that's when young women begin to opt out of leadership. So they feel really empowered and excited. In the video that Taylor mentioned, is a young woman up, she's a girl, not even a woman, created this podium for herself, and she's basically said, if you tell me I can, I will, and she owns that. And so I think the sooner young women hear they can, then they will begin to see it and know it. And we don't just tell them. What we do is, as Leah mentioned, we surround them with a community of people that are telling them that. We have a huge resource in an elected network that comes in and sits down with our young women, anything from a school board member to the state council, or to a state senator who comes in, or at the federal level as well, who comes in and sits down and says, look, this is my path to politics. I am not that much, at your age, I looked just like you. And look, I did it, so can you. And I think the more you can continue to get that into them and then give them those resources and give them that community. And what's been beautiful about Ignite is we have young women who start in Ignite in high schools, and they go into colleges and start Ignite chapters on college campuses and find Ignite in their community, and they don't want to let go of that sense. Now they're working on each other's campaigns, and they're,
I think we want to go to the reception and drink, right? So I think that we need a drink after this week. Yeah. Thank you, Dolores. Yeah. How I'll say is why we did the partnership with Barbie and Dove is because girls are smart, and they're listening, and they're paying attention to the cultural messages, and they need to hear that you can be anything. And continuously, and it's just like STEM. They're going to opt out if we don't keep reiterating that and giving an ecosystem. And what I will add to this piece of there's this entire cause about women's equal representation that has to also be about the singular races, but also about this larger entire cultural groundswell of wanting to support women. And that's part of it, of what girls are listening to, is the sexism that's happening. And we're releasing a new pulse poll out of our Name It, Change It project that we do at the Women's Media Center. And it's important, what I want to leave you with is part of supporting other women running is to continuously, and even Senator Warren talked about this, keep calling out the sexism and the racism that you see. The research that we've done since 2010 continuously shows that women are not bitching and whining. It absolutely damages voter opinion. Absolutely. And the research has also shown that if you call it out, it helps the women appear stronger. It helps people remind, like, oh yeah, that was sexist. Oh yeah, that doesn't really belong in our debate, in our public discourse. So an ad is that there's that support one-on-one, and there's also this other piece of continuously challenging the culture that women are operating in, because that's how it has to be, those two pieces.
That's right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We were gonna share action items, but what we're gonna do is find us at the cocktail reception and ask us what our action items are. So thank you all so much for joining us today.
So thank you so much, Taylor, and all the panelists. That was fabulous. And yes, they will be at the reception, and you can talk to them. And I just want to, before we go get a drink, I just want to thank everybody for coming. Everything that you have contributed in the panels, through your presence, through meeting somebody at your table that you didn't know before, all of this is fantastic and is part of what we're trying to build here with the New England Women's Policy Conference. And I also want to underscore the linkage between what we've been talking about here on this panel and what we've been talking about in terms of policy issues. Of course, we want more representation of women at every single level, but why do we want that? Because we want certain kinds of policies, because we want to make people's lives better, particularly poor people and communities of color and others that are disenfranchised. So I just love ending with this. I love the things that Leah was saying about how she made a difference in her city council. It's very inspiring, and I think that to me, one of the things that this conference says is that we are reclaiming the public discourse about women, about people of color, about what a leader is, and what economic justice is. And so I invite you all to the reception, and I thank you so much for coming.